Hello everyone, this is Keith Lang, once again trying to keep everybody in the loop on what's going on. Yesterday we had a briefing with the FAA and the NBAA and AOPA all involved to present our case on how to keep pavement to runway 220 and still decouple. So I'm going to briefly go through that presentation. It takes about 15 minutes, so I went into the presentation with a goal to present to the FAA an alternative to tearing up pavement from runway 220. I wanted to emphasize the need to maintain pavement to provide adequate level of safety for runway excursions. I also want to emphasize the need to keep pavement as an alternative runway to 624 in the event that is unavailable due to planned or unplanned events. Emphasize the need to keep pavement due to aircraft taxiing conflicts. This was the contents that I presented to them. There's all the research that I went through at looking at various airports across the country and presenting the findings of that. I also kind of focused in on a Santa Rosa study because it kind of resembles what we have here, not entirely, but closely. I also went over the growth of Kootenai and Coeur d'Alene Airport. I presented proposals for decoupling runway 2220 from 624 and still keeping pavement. I also looked at the current plan that we have in place and the timeline, and we looked at the last another alternative. So these are the airports that I researched. There's actually several more, but these are the ones that I was able to get some data from. And you can see there, Santa Rosa, California, and Corpus Christi. Out of all of those are the only two that were that have actually done something to meet the mandate of decoupling, which is interesting because there's still nothing out there today to go to as a centralized website to see who's complied and how they've complied, and that's kind of frustrating from an example standpoint. So I thought we were kind of one of the last ones, and we might be one of the last ones, but there's nothing to show me that data, and that's kind of frustrating. The findings that we had, it's interesting as you deal with these regional airport district offices, they all kind of handle it a little bit different, and they prioritize and put the urgency different depending on where they're located and with these airports. So that's kind of frustrating, but it's not uncommon amongst the FAA and its FSDOs, and some of us has seen that and dealt with that over our years of aviation. Anyway, most airports are aware of the decoupling mandate, but do not feel an immediate urgency or pressure by the FAA to have it completed or started. And that's the Texas Southwest region, and specifically Harlingen, Midland, Odessa, and San Angelo. A couple airports that contacted were totally unaware of the issue altogether, and surprisingly enough, Stewart Beach, Florida was one of those, and Burley, Idaho, which Burley, Idaho has a lot of other problems due to elevation and land constrictions. But Stewart Beach was a surprise because they have 3 runways, and there's 2 major hotspots that have a potential for lining up on the wrong runway. The master plan of preferred alternatives of all these airports favored lengthening of a runway or both runways. Some involve very complicated and expensive alternatives of totally shifting one of the runways, and that was in San Angelo. Totally shifting a runway, that's very expensive, it's like $40 million. It's crazy. Some airports have elected to shorten the runway or remove it, but those airports typically had 3 runways, and one of them was underused, poorly maintained, too short, and that was like the case of Janesville and Las Cruces. In the situation with Corpus Christi, they had 2 long runways, but when they shortened those 2 runways, they still had adequate length of like 6,100 feet and 7,100 feet or something like that. But actually, I think it was 7,500 feet, 6,100 feet. So Santa Rosa study, again, it was similar to the Coeur d'Alene as far as its geometry. It had a firefighting base and serves a tourist economy somewhat, not as much as we do, but they do. In 2011, the airport master plan was to approve to lengthen runway 14. So the problem before the lengthening of this 14 was the runway ended right here, and so the taxiway hotel, there's this common area, much like what we have at Coeur d'Alene. So they're fixing it was to add more pavement. Unfortunately, they still have this common area coming in, and still today they have incursions. So they've done an update to address the situation. Alternative to addressing the situation is to extend 2.0 by adding this displaced threshold to taxiway alpha and removing taxiway hotel. And that's their newest alternative to accomplishing that. And it still maintains pavement. And I find this similar to what we're trying to do. We're not trying to keep the pavement on the north side, but we're trying to keep pavement on the south side. So these are some of the other alternatives that Santa Rosa has placed, that they've put in their updated master plan, all of which but one show a removing of pavement. It's very important that they keep the pavement from the airport aspect like we have. The operators, they favor that runway like we do at our airport. And the firefighting is a very key element to their area. So our airport, this is something I wanted to show as the population growth of Kootenai County of an increase of 143%, 100,000 people over the course of 30 years, and we don't have any signs of slowing down. And the same thing has happened with our airport, showing the yearly operations of 123,000, and most of those happening during the 4 months of summer. The third busiest airport in the state of Idaho behind Caldwell and Boise, the busiest airport for air taxi, and it's 135 operations, 27,000. And that's something I really want to focus in on, because those are these big aircraft that are coming into our community, the Global Expresses, the Challenges, the Gulfstream, Citations, BBJs, and even if some of you guys remember Air Force One back in the early 2000s. We have hangar spaces evidently limited until they start building out the north side. We've had an addition of Standcraft, which is probably about a $35 million or $40 million investment that they put in. We have large private hangars on the books to be built here at our airport. So that's a big thing. And those air taxi operators is what brings in a ton of money, either and affects people, county taxpayers directly or indirectly. But they're the ones coming in with those summer homes that, either you like or dislike, but whatever, they're, on the lake and, living there for a couple weeks, and they have properties in Hawaii and all that. So these are the guys that could be an asset to us as far as demonstrating operations requiring an additional length of 7,600 feet and helping us keep pavement on runway 220 by extending 624. We might be able to accomplish that, and that's a key point. So I want you to remember that as we get further into the presentation. All right, moving on. So this is kind of a history of the proposals to decouple runway 220 from 624. As you remember, airport operations went over and presented their master plan to the ADO, and their number one alternative was to lengthen runway 220 in order to meet the mandate of decoupling. That was quickly shot down by the FAA, basically saying, runway 220's got other issues. It doesn't meet B2, C1 standards. They're going to get into that. Maybe they'll present this to you. And so from their standpoint, it didn't meet primary, secondary alternatives, so therefore it was deemed an additional runway. But with pressure from the airport and showing that it was a necessary runway for crosswind for small aircraft and how often it gets used, 75% of the time, due to proximity to hangar alignment or hangar locations along with its alignments to predominant winds, that they were able to get that runway lumped into, I believe, a crosswind, so making it where they could fund it. They didn't even want to fund it, like I said in the previous thing, so it was going to be up to Kootenai County, so that wasn't going to be a bad problem for us here. So they were able to get that and keep funding, but the key to keeping funding was you got to play by their rules and their standards. And that was the only way to do that, was to shorten the runway as it was proposed in the airport master plan 2R, which was removing pavement. Unfortunately, we didn't have an idea how to present another alternative and somehow keeping pavement early on in this process. So that's what we're kind of playing catch up. We're way behind, and we're doing our best that we can to present them another alternative that would allow us to keep that pavement for excursions, for safety, and another alternative runway for usage in case 624 is down. So this is the current plan minus to decouple, minus the area in blue showing that added on approach end of 2.4. So the red equals removal, blue is the added pavement, just kind of come in 90 degrees to approach into 2.4. And we have a blast pad of I think 500 feet behind approach end of 2.0. So that creates a lot of problems, and we'll get into that. This is the current plan for decoupling. In FY23, you'll see that the 624 will be closed for 10 days, but 220 will remain open until 2025, or at least until we can get the resurfacing done of 624. So we'll get that done. We'll have the 5,600 feet. They're also probably during that time, when they resurface, go ahead and do the taxiway Bravo 4, and that'll be closed for 5 days. They'll leave the north side of taxiway Delta north of 624 to do last, so we'll have access to the runway when 2 and 20 is closed. And then once all of FY25 is completed in 26, they propose to add on taxiway Foxtrot that will couple up to approach into 6 for traffic congestions, okay? And then they'll demolish the north side of taxiway Delta. And then now on the current alternative, this is what we're showing. The blue lines on the runway are the preferred departure for runway 24 for large jets, and the preferred alternative or the preferred arrival is runway 6. And several reasons for that is, well, we only have one approach into the airport, and that was the 6. We have the noise issue if you go up here to the east with Hayden and the rising terrain. So you can see some of the reasons why we like to land on 6 and depart off 2.4. 2.4 on departure allows us to go straight out through the valley without having to do the departure procedure and wasting time and energy that way. So we'll cover, we see that runway 220 is closed, open for taxiway during construction, so it allows two-way traffic as somebody comes up Alpha, somebody could go down runway 20. 624 will be maintained at 5,600 feet, so we'll still have adequate runway for large aircraft. But that will, as you can imagine, cause an issue with taxiing for aircraft from the east side of the airfield. Post-construction issues, well, if we lose that runway length on 20, we could, it's going to increase the likelihood of an excursion if there's a maintenance issue, a failure of some such, or a contaminated runway. And another reason, another big deal, is there's no alternative runway greater than 4,400 feet if 624 is ever closed. The other thing we'll have is aircraft holding short of 624 will have conflicting, this is what I mean by that. Aircraft prefer to use, okay, so we have this airplane holding, this guy comes in, you do the current method, obviously we see a conflict up there on 2.4 for aircraft trying to maneuver around each other. Okay, current alternative, but now this time we keep the pavement. This is something we proposed to the FAA, is try to maintain that pavement, put a displaced threshold, okay, and therefore we have a avenue in which landing traffic could get around the departing traffic. Makes sense, except that taxiway Bravo 5 up here to the north still allows an aircraft to potentially line up and go down runway 20. Therefore, again, they kind of were negative about that alternative, unfortunately. The next one. So this is the displaced threshold or a stopway as it's shown here, and lengthening the 624. This would make everybody happy, right? Everybody would be happy. We got aircraft holding up here short of 24, landing traffic wishing to go south. It can exit there at Alpha 2 or whatever the taxiway is. The stopway would be here only in the event that an airplane lands on, say, 20 or runway 2 and has an issue and needs to utilize that extra runway or surface area. Also, we could use that as a alternative to 624 when it's down for planned or unplanned events, and use it for a full length of 5,600 feet if that runway 624 was closed. We felt like this was the best solution. We saved money for not tearing up pavement on 220. We can use that money towards the extension of 24. The problem is we don't have some of the funding for the FAA. They came up with a big problem there. As far as the extension goes, they need to show documentation of these 500 operations, requiring an additional length of, would it be close to 8,000 feet, I think, or greater than 7,600 feet showing operations. So they keep throwing up these roadblocks, but I think this is the best overall solution that we could put on the table to accomplish those goals that I mentioned at the very beginning. So again, here's the benefits of 624 by extending it, the threshold, and putting a stopway on or a displaced threshold there on 20. Maintains the safety issue. We get temporary usage of 220 if 624 is closed. Adds operational efficiency for deconflicting taxiway traffic issues. Provides a common sense solution, and money spent wisely. So it seems to be a no-brainer, but in dealing with the FAA, it's still, we ask the questions here. Obviously, we don't get many answers. I think we just got to keep poking at them to try and get the best solution time. So here's the outcome. Prior to decoupling, 624 will be resurfaced and aircraft will have 5,600 feet. So that's a positive. Runway 220 will be reduced to 4,400 feet as currently planned. However, FAA may give considerations of alternatives to help maintain the pavement to 220 by adding maybe a displaced threshold, stopway, or blast pad. Still hard arguments. Considerations will be given to explore ideas to mitigate taxi conflicts for landing and departing traffic from 24 and arriving on 6 by doing a taxiway bypass. Extensions of 624 will be considered, but justification must be met of those 500 more operations. So we're trying, airports put out a survey, we'll see what we can do. We'll see how it goes. I'm hoping. All right, what's next? Well, we got to continue to try to get the county commissioners to advocate to the FAA for them to extend runway 624 in order to spend the necessary funds to do it the right way the first time. So we got to get the commissioners on board in agreement on that last alternative. Continue to validate for longer runway of 624 by gathering data from operators. So guys, that's it. 18 minutes, 19 minutes of a presentation. You have my emails, my phone numbers. If you want to talk some more about it, I'd be more than happy to take the call. Thank you.